Life to me has always been like a martial arts match with no dress rehearsal. You have to strike fast and stay true to your heart. The world remembers me for Jeet Kune Do, for my roars and fists on screen, for bringing Chinese kung fu to every corner of the globe. Yet few know that behind all those sweat-soaked days and years of wandering the world, my heart too was stirred by love. I've known youthful crushes, lifelong companionship, the harsh trials of reality, and quiet unspeakable regrets. Every relationship was like a move in Jeet Kune Do, no flashy pretense, only raw heartbeat and inner struggle. 1. The Winds of Hong Kong, the summer of my first love, 1957 to 1959. Before I turned 18, my life revolved around the street vibes of Hong Kong and the glow of movie set lights. I started acting as a child star at the age of 6 under my father Li Hoi-chen. I played the mischievous boy in The Kid and a young lad in Thunderstorm. On camera I was natural and polished. In real life I was wild and rebellious. Wearing my white school uniform at St. Francis Xavier's College, I could never hide the frayed cuffs worn thin from endless training. That was until I met Cho Man Yi, daughter of the famous actor Cho Tatwa. She wore her hair in 2 neat black braids, and her smile curved like a crescent moon. We met by a small twist of fate. One day I performed a side somersault on the school playground, lost my balance, and fell onto the lawn, tearing a hole in my uniform trousers. The other students burst into laughter, but only Manyi stepped forward quietly, handing me a folded tissue. Her voice was soft yet clear. "Are you all right?" That somersault was amazing. "My dad says you're born to be a scream fighter." Her father Cho Tatwa was a legendary righteous hero in Hong Kong cinema, an old close friend of my father. That bond made us comfortable around each other from the start. After that, every corner of Hong Kong held our memories. At the fishball stall in Yamati, I would queue for 20 minutes just to buy her a skewer. I'd watch her dip it in sweet chili sauce and bite slowly, unaware of the sauce smudging her lips. At midnight movie theaters in Causeway Bay, we'd sit in the back row. She'd quietly grip my sleeve, closing her eyes nervously during fight scenes, yet peeking through her fingers all the same. I'd ride the second-hand motorcycle my father gave me, taking her cruising along Victoria Harbor. The sea breeze tangled her braids and brushed my arm, sending a soft tickle through me. I'd slow down on purpose, wishing that gentle moment could last forever. I loved showing off for her back then. In the empty yard behind her house, I'd split wooden planks with my bare hands, basking in her admiring gaze. While she did her schoolwork, I'd sit beside practicing calligraphy, messy and clumsy as it was, insisting she praise me for having master's bearing. Man Yi's tenderness smoothed the rough edges of my temper. I even began planning our future, film a few more movies, save enough money, propose to her, and build a quiet little home right here in Hong Kong. But fate turned suddenly. By 1959, my street fights had dragged others into trouble. My father Li Hoi-chen was furious and worried. He slammed his palm on the table and said firmly, "Bruce, if you don't change this temper of yours, you'll land in serious trouble. Go to America, stay with your brother, and start anew." I knew his decision was final. What pained me most wasn't leaving home, but leaving Man Yi. The night before I departed, I met her on Repulse Bay Beach. I clutched a small copper dragon pendant I'd saved 3 months of acting wages to buy. The dragon is the emblem of our Chinese people, and a quiet obsession of mine. Man Yi, wait for me. Give me 3 years at most. Once I've settled in America, I'll come back for you. I'll give you a good life. I placed the pendant into her trembling hand. She bowed her head, tears dropping onto the sand, leaving tiny dark stains. After a long moment she looked up, eyes red. "I'll wait for you. Please take care of yourself, and stop fighting." Life in San Francisco was far harder than I imagined. I struggled with the language, working 12-hour days washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant run by my father's old friend. At night I stayed in a cramped attic training relentlessly, my punching bag thudding against the wall, echoing the loneliness of my hidden longing. Man Yi's letters became my only comfort. She wrote of Hong Kong's weather, silly little school stories, and drew tiny smiling faces in the margins. I kept every letter close to my chest, reading them over and over until the ink blurred. In the spring of 1960, Man Yi wrote saying she would come visit me during summer break. Overjoyed, I immediately saved up and sent her the plane fare, yet I forgot to write down the exact arrival time and meeting spot clearly. 2. Seattle's Snow, Young Love and the Burden of Reality, 1960 to 1962. At the end of 1959, I left San Francisco and moved to Seattle, staying with my father's old friends Mr. and Mrs. Billy Chow. With their help, I enrolled at Edison Technical School to prepare for the University of Washington. Seattle's winters were bitterly cold, heavy snow blanketing campus lawns and roads. As a young Chinese man surrounded by blonde-haired, blue-eyed classmates, I always felt out of place, until I met Amy Sai. Amy was Japanese-American, born to a Japanese immigrant father and American mother. She had long black hair and deep, warm eyes, with a bright, lively spirit unlike Man Yi's gentle softness. We met in a university dance class. She danced modern contemporary, light and graceful, spinning like a butterfly. I stared, fascinated, and walked over to speak. Your movements carry real power, just like the borrowed force principle in martial arts. She blinked then smiled. You're Bruce Lee, the kung fu master everyone talks about. I've heard you can split wooden boards with your bare hands. We quickly grew close. Curious about Chinese kung fu, she asked me to teach her basic stances, punches, and blocks on the campus lawn after class. She wasn't strong, yet she learned precise fundamentals perfectly. In return, she taught me waltz dancing. Trained only in hard, sharp martial arts moves, I stumbled clumsily, constantly stepping on her feet. She never grew annoyed, simply laughing and brushing dust off my clothes. Take it slow. Kung Fu takes practice, and so does dancing. It's all about rhythm. We were inseparable those days. We sipped coffee at campus cafes. She loaded hers with 3 spoons of sugar and heavy cream. I drank mine black, saying it kept me sharp. We wandered Pike Place Market, where she bought fresh tulips for her dorm vase while I lingered over handmade knives, unable to resist testing their balance. She'd come watch me teach part-time Kung Fu in Seattle's Chinatown, handing me warm water when I grew tired, whispering softly, "Don't push yourself too hard. Your health matters most." With Amy, my feelings matured deeper than my teenage crush on Man Yi. I admired her independence and cheerfulness. She understood my dreams and stubborn perseverance. With her, I never needed to pretend or hide. In the summer of 1961, I proposed for the first time at the foot of Mount Rainier. I bought a small ring with half a year's savings and hid it inside her favorite strawberry cake. When she found it, her eyes grew misty, yet she shook her head. "Bruce, I love you too, but our future is far too difficult." I knew her fears. Racial discrimination still ran deep across America back then. Even as old segregation laws softened, a Chinese man loving a Japanese American woman faced immense social judgment and pressure. Amy's father spoke to me coldly and firmly. "You are talented, but you are Chinese, and we are Japanese. This society will never accept your marriage. My daughter deserves a stable, peaceful life, not a lifetime of judgment and gossip." I argued that I would dedicate myself to spreading Chinese Kung Fu, earning respect for myself and for us both. He only shook his head. Dreams cannot defeat reality. Caught between her family and me, Amy slowly faded, growing weary and withdrawn. She stopped sitting beside me in class, making excuses to avoid meeting me on weekends. I knew she bore unbearable pressure, and I was powerless to ease it. In the winter of 1962, Seattle was covered in rare heavy snow. We met by the campus lake. Tears streamed down her red, cold cheeks. "Bruce, I'm sorry. I can't go against my parents and lose my family. Let's part, it's better for both of us." My heart turned cold as ice. I wanted to hold her close, yet stopped myself. I could not be selfish enough to make her choose between love and family. I understand. My voice was hoarse. I pulled out a wooden hairpin I'd carved myself from a broken peachwood training staff, spending a full month smoothing its edges. Take this. Thank you for walking this part of life with me. She held the hairpin, crying harder, then simply nodded and walked away into the falling snow. I stood frozen, watching her figure vanish until snow covered her footprints and the warmth in my heart. That love was beautiful yet fragile, like a brief snowfall. It taught me love is never only between two people, it carries the weight of reality and the prejudice of an era. I never blamed Amy, nor the times we lived in, only that we met too late, bound by circumstance. Yet this experience matured me deeply. I realized if I wanted to earn respect, if I wanted to protect the ones I loved, I had to grow stronger, not only in martial skill, but in career and standing. Years later, when I founded the Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute at the University of Washington, I still thought of Amy, of her laughing while teaching me to dance. That quiet regret became fuel for my endless drive. But fate turned suddenly. By 1959, my street fights had dragged others into trouble. My father Li Hoichen was furious and worried. He slammed his palm on the table and said firmly, "Bruce, if you don't change this temper of yours, you'll land in serious trouble. Go to America, stay with your brother, and start anew." I knew his decision was final. What pained me most wasn't leaving home, but leaving Man Yi. The night before I departed, I met her on Repulse Bay Beach. I clutched a small copper dragon pendant I'd saved 3 months of acting wages to buy. The dragon is the emblem of our Chinese people, and a quiet obsession of mine. Man Yi, wait for me. Give me 3 years at most. Once I've settled in America, I'll come back for you. I'll give you a good life. I placed the pendant into her trembling hand. She bowed her head, tears dropping onto the sand, leaving tiny dark stains. After a long moment she looked up, eyes red. "I'll wait for you. Please take care of yourself, and stop fighting." Life in San Francisco was far harder than I imagined. I struggled with the language, working 12-hour days washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant run by my father's old friend. At night I stayed in a cramped attic training relentlessly, my punching bag thudding against the wall, echoing the loneliness of my hidden longing. Man Yi's letters became my only comfort. She wrote of Hong Kong's weather, silly little school stories, and drew tiny smiling faces in the margins. I kept every letter close to my chest, reading them over and over until the ink blurred. In the spring of 1960, Man Yi wrote saying she would come visit me during summer break. Overjoyed, I immediately saved up and sent her the plane fare, yet I forgot to write down the exact arrival time and meeting spot clearly. 3. Linda, my forever safe harbor, 1963 to 1973. In 1963, I officially founded the Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute in a small basement space in Seattle, Chinatown, renting it for $50 a month. Back then, most Americans dismissed Chinese Kung Fu as nothing but flashy, empty tricks. Business was slow. Only 3 students enrolled the first month. One of them was Linda Emery. Tall, blonde, with clear, determined eyes, 19-year-old Linda hesitated at the studio door for a long time before stepping inside. She spoke earnestly. "I want to learn real Kung Fu, not for show, to protect myself, and to truly understand Chinese culture." Later I learned she'd long been fascinated by Eastern culture. After accidentally watching a clip of my martial arts performance on campus, she knew immediately she wanted to learn from me. To test her resolve, I pushed her hard from day one. I made her hold a horse stance for 40 minutes, demanding every punch land with full power and precise form, correcting every small flaw. Learning Kung Fu has no shortcuts, only endless repetition and grit. Yet Linda endured. Sweat streamed down her face, her legs trembling, but she never once complained of giving up. When I finally called a break, she sank down breathless yet smiling. Kung Fu is far harder than I imagined, but I love the challenge. Her perseverance won my respect. Day after day she became my most dedicated student. While others trained an hour, she trained 2. She repeated every movement until perfect. She quietly cleaned the studio floor without being asked, fetched water and towels for other students. During breaks, she would sit and listen quietly as I spoke of Chinese history and my philosophy of martial arts, eyes full of sincere admiration. Our bond grew slowly into love. That Christmas in 1963, a group of drunk local thugs broke into the studio, mocking Kung Fu as a scam and smashing my hanging punching gloves. I was ready to confront them, but Linda stepped bravely in front of me. Her face paled with fear, hands trembling, yet she spoke firmly. "This is a martial arts school, not a place for trouble. If you want to fight, you go through me first." In that moment, looking at her slender, brave figure, my heart filled with warmth. She had no extraordinary martial arts skill, yet she possessed a courage stronger than most men. I proposed to her despite widespread disapproval. Back then, a Chinese man marrying a white American woman was considered rebellious and unacceptable. Her mother spoke to me with clear worry. "Bruce, you have no stable income. Your studio's future is uncertain. Can you give Linda a good life? Your cultures and lifestyles are worlds apart. You will face endless conflicts." I held her hand firmly. "I have nothing now but my Kung Fu and my whole heart for your daughter. I will work every breath to give her a good life. I promise I will always cherish her." On August 17, 1964, we married in a small Seattle chapel. No grand venue, no lavish banquet, only 14 close friends and students attended. Linda wore a simple white dress she'd bought with her own savings, radiant like an angel. I wore a borrowed suit, palms sweating nervously. When the pastor asked if I would take Linda as my wife, I answered without hesitation, "I do." Those 3 words were the most certain promise I ever made. Our married life was simple yet full of warmth. We lived in a tiny 30-square-meter apartment with second-hand furniture. Linda dropped out of her drama program at the University of Washington to fully support my Kung Fu school and my film career. She became my all-round partner, managing studio accounts, tracking student attendance, preparing drinking water and towels for classes, minding the shop when I taught elsewhere, and even organizing my notes and translating my Jeet Kune Do theories. I often stayed up late training and refining new techniques. Linda would stay up quietly beside me, preparing simple late-night meals, hot noodles, or Chinese buns she tried learning to make, always oversalted, yet full of love. When I grew exhausted, she would massage my shoulders gently. "Don't push yourself too hard. If you wear yourself out, what will become of me and the studio?" On February 1, 1965, our son Brandon was born. Holding that tiny wrinkled baby in my arms, I truly understood the meaning of being a father. I vowed to fight harder to build a secure life for my family. Linda held Brandon weakly yet smiling. "Bruce, we have a home now." To provide better for them, I pushed myself harder to spread Kung Fu worldwide. In 1964, I performed my famous 2-finger push-up and 1-inch punch at the Long Beach International Karate Championships, stunning the crowd and making a name for myself in American martial arts circles. Soon after, I was cast as Kato in The Green Hornet. Filming days were brutal. I rose at 4 every morning for set calls, returning exhausted at 11 each night. Linda never complained. She prepared my breakfast and lunch daily, leaving a lamp on and warm soup waiting when I came home. Once I cut my knee badly on a prop during a fight scene, needing 5 stitches. Linda rushed straight to the set. Tears filled her eyes seeing my injury, yet she held them back. "Be more careful filming from now on. Your family is always waiting for you to come home." In that moment, I swore I would give her and our children the best life possible. On April 19, 1969, our daughter Shannon was born. She inherited Linda's fair hair and blue eyes, and my stubborn spirit. Every time I returned home from filming, Brandon would run straight into my arms begging me to teach him Kung Fu. Shannon would stare up curiously, reaching to touch the stubble on my face. Linda would serve my favorite home-cooked Chinese dishes, mapo tofu, kung pao chicken, recipes she'd learned from Chinese elders in Chinatown. The flavors were never exactly like home, yet every bite was filled with love. Those years I traveled constantly between America and Hong Kong, filming movies and promoting Jeet Kune Do, facing endless misunderstanding and doubt. Some accused me of turning my back on tradition, others claimed my kung fu was not authentic, some even deliberately made things difficult for me on set. Yet whenever I thought of Linda and our children, I found endless strength. She comforted me in disappointment, grounded me in success, guided me in confusion. She cared for our family behind the scenes, managed studio affairs, replied to fan letters, and even helped me analyze contracts with film companies. I always said the core of Jeet Kune Do is be formless, shapeless, like water. With Linda, I learned the true meaning of love, to stand side by side, to grow together. In 1971, I returned to Hong Kong to film The Big Boss. The film broke Hong Kong box office records overnight. I called Linda at once, elated. "Linda, we did it." Her gentle reply came over the line, "I always knew you could. I'm so proud of you." Fame kept me busier than ever, traveling non-stop, missing countless moments with my family. Every time I left home, Brandon clung to my clothes, unwilling to let me go. Shannon cried, calling for daddy. Linda hid her own sorrow quietly, packing my luggage gently. "Go follow your dream. I'll take care of everything here. Just look after yourself." I knew how hard it was for her raising 2 children alone, yet she never once complained to me. Looking back now, I owe Linda more than words can say. I missed Brandon's birthdays, Shannon's first steps, countless quiet days by her side. I wasn't even with her in my final moments. Yet she never blamed me, always standing by my side, protecting our family and my legacy. She was my one and only true love, my safe harbor through every storm. Without her, there would never be the Bruce Lee the world remembers. For Nora Meow, the sister I admired beyond the screen, 1970 to 1973. In 1970, a waist injury forced me to pause teaching at my studio and return to Hong Kong to recover. Through my father's introduction, I met Raymond Chow, founder of Golden Harvest Films, who invited me to star in his movies. I agreed at once. This was my chance to bring authentic Chinese kung fu to a global audience. That was when I met Nora Meow. Nora was the daughter of my father's old friend Miao. Our families had known each other for years. We'd met briefly as children at Hong Kong gatherings, when she was a quiet, shy little girl. We reunited years later on a film set. At 21, she was already assigned Golden Harvest actress, beautiful, talented, refreshingly straightforward, never spoiled or petty like many in the industry. We first worked together on The Big Boss, filmed in a small remote town in Thailand. Conditions were harsh, sweltering heat, endless mosquitoes, simple outdated equipment, yet she never once complained. She threw herself fully into action scenes. When the director offered a double for a scene where she was pushed roughly to the ground, she insisted on performing it herself. She landed hard on sharp stones, bruising her knee badly, yet simply rubbed it off and smiled. "It's just a small injury, won't slow filming down." Her stubborn grit reminded me of Linda, and I grew instantly fond of her, affectionately calling her little sister. She never minded, often following me around set, asking martial arts questions or listening to my stories of life in America. She understood the pressure I carried. Every fight scene I demanded raw, authentic action, willing to redo takes dozens of times for perfection. She saw the weight on my shoulders as a Chinese-American leading man breaking into Hong Kong cinema, determined to prove myself with pure skill. Once, after refilming a scene over 30 times, I grew frustrated and sat alone smoking in a quiet corner. Nora walked over silently, handing me an icy drink. "Bruce, brother, don't be too hard on yourself. You've already given your best. Audiences don't just watch your kung fu, they feel your sincerity in every move." Her understanding touched me deeply. On set, our chemistry was effortless and natural. In Fist of Fury, she stood beside me as I charged into the Honko dojo to avenge my master, her eyes filled with quiet worry and unwavering support. We filmed that scene all day, throwing countless punches and kicks until I was drenched in sweat. Nora stayed by the set the entire time, bringing me water and wiping sweat from my forehead. Raymond Chow laughed and said we were born on-screen partners. Reporters quickly spread dating rumors, publishing set photos with sensational headlines claiming we were lovers off-screen as well. When journalists pressed Nora about our relationship, she always smiled calmly. "Bruce brother is like real family to me, just an elder brother." I also stated clearly in interviews, Nora is a gifted actress and a family friend. I have always seen her as my younger sister. Yet I knew she held quiet feelings for me. After filming Wrapped late at night, she would walk with me quietly through hotel gardens, finally saying softly, "Bruce brother, I admire you deeply, your talent, your perseverance." Her eyes held a gentle, quiet affection I could not miss. But my heart belonged firmly to Linda and my children. Linda had walked with me through my hardest days, sacrificing so much for our family. She was irreplaceable. One night after wrapping The Way of the Dragon in Rome, we wandered the quiet city streets under lamplight. She whispered, "I know you have a family. I would never dream of ruining what you have. I just truly care for you." My heart ached for her. I could only reply gently, "Nora, you are kind, brave, and incredibly talented. You deserve someone who can give you all his heart. I have Linda, and I cannot betray her or my children." She smiled sadly, eyes glistening with quiet loss, yet nodded, "I know." I just needed to say it aloud, to let my heart rest easy. "From now on, I'll still be your sister, and you'll always be my Bruce brother." After that we remained close friends and perfect on-screen partners, keeping that unspoken affection tucked quietly away. She continued supporting me on set, listening to my frustrations. I helped and advised her whenever she faced career troubles. In 1973, while I filmed Enter the Dragon, Nora visited the set bringing my favorite Hong Kong pastries. Exhausted from back-to-back filming, I looked worn and drained. She said softly, "Rest more, Bruce brother. Don't overwork yourself." I laughed and replied, "Once this film finishes, I'll go home and spend time with Linda and the kids." I never knew those would be our final words. 5. Betty Ting Pei, A Fateful Encounter at Life's End, 1972 to 1973. I met Betty Ting Pei during the filming of Enter the Dragon in 1972. Born into a prominent family, with ancestral ties to warlord Chow Kuan's circle and a wealthy Hong Kong businessman father, 23-year-old Betty was assigned Shaw Brothers actress, strikingly beautiful, straightforward by nature, deeply interested in kung fu and Eastern metaphysics. We met by chance. Golden Harvest and Shaw Brothers were filming on the same lot one day. During a break she walked straight over to me and said, "Mr. Bruce Lee, I've always admired you. Your kung fu is incredible. Could you teach me a few self-defense moves?" Her directness amused me, and I agreed gladly. Between set breaks I taught her simple practical techniques, breaking free from restraint, striking with elbow force. Betty was quick-witted and learned fast. She saw deeper meaning in martial arts than most, asking thoughtful questions. Is there a connection between kung fu and metaphysics? Is the effortless action in Jeet Kune Do the same as Taoist Wu Wei? I enjoyed exchanging ideas with her. Her insights gave me new perspective. By then I'd filmed 4 back-to-back classics, The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, The Way of the Dragon, and Enter the Dragon. Constant filming left me physically drained, suffering from frequent severe headaches and insomnia. Well-versed in traditional wellness and metaphysical practice, Betty shared calming meditation methods and dietary healing recipes, often bringing me nourishing homemade soups to soothe my nerves and clear my mind. Our relationship was pure and platonic, built on sincere friendship and intellectual exchange. She visited set to keep me company during exhausting shoots, easing my stress with quiet conversation. I offered her acting advice whenever she faced difficulties in her own roles. I knew the public speculated endlessly about us, with tabloids spreading wild rumors of a secret affair. Yet my conscience was clear. I respected her only as a dear friend, with no improper feelings between us. On July 20th, 1973, a brutal headache overwhelmed me. I called Betty asking if she knew any way to ease the pain. She invited me to her apartment to rest, saying her calming incense might help relax my mind. With no filming scheduled that afternoon, I agreed. At her place, she brewed me tea and lit soothing incense, letting me lie quietly on her sofa. I closed my eyes, listening to her gentle talk of metaphysical philosophy, my headache fading as I relaxed. I never imagined that quiet afternoon would mark the end of my life. Around 4 o'clock, Betty found me unresponsive and unconscious. She immediately called emergency services and rushed me to hospital, yet I could not be saved. The cause was recorded as cerebral edema. I never expected life to end so suddenly, nor that my passing would drag Betty into a storm of public opinion. Headlines everywhere screamed that I died in her home, blaming her unfairly as the cause of my death. Her career collapsed overnight. Shaw Brothers dropped her. She faced global fan anger and endless accusations, even abandoned by much of her own family. My heart aches with guilt whenever I think of what she endured. If not for me, her life would never have fallen into such turmoil. She would never have borne endless public condemnation and pain. Later, she underwent repeated police investigations to clear her name. Official reports ruled my death accidental, yet the damage to her reputation and life could never be undone. In 1976, Betty converted to Buddhism, taking the religious name Wushan, withdrawing entirely from the entertainment industry to devote herself to spiritual practice. In interviews years later, she said, "Bruce's passing shattered me. It took me years to heal. After embracing Buddhism, I finally let go of the past and understood the true meaning of life." She also wrote a book, Bruce Lee, My Elder Brother, honestly recounting our friendship, clearing up media lies, and expressing her quiet sorrow and remembrance for me. I know she carried unnecessary guilt for years, blaming herself for inviting me that day. Yet I wish she could understand. It was never her fault. I failed to care properly for my own overworked body. Fate simply wrote a sudden end to my story. I only hope she has truly let go of the past, finding peace and happiness at last.